So I guess with the writer's strike over, movies are now getting kicked into high gear, like a lot of them. So I'm going to be talking about 3 movie projects that I have gotten news of, and I haven't really gotten to talk about them, and I probably wouldn't do like one video for all of them, because that snuck up on me. I probably wouldn't have enough to talk about them to make separate videos, so I thought I'd talk about 3 movies that have caught my attention that are going into production, and we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about them all here. Now, keep in mind, with all these movies, they are in production, and production can easily halt. That's another thing. That's been kind of the thing with 2 of those movies especially. So, let's get into it, talking about the first movie that was announced, and that was the last night. And I was actually like, oh, cool! But then I remembered, this movie has been off the ground, on and off the ground, so many times you'd think it was like a bird who broke its wing. I had a better analogy, but I lost it. Anyway, that movie is The Blob. The Blob has been a remake target, White Whale, it's been a remake White Whale for years. For years, it was supposed to be Rob Zombie who would make The Blob. And while one hand, I think he'd be really cool in the gore, the other hand, you would just wouldn't care about the characters, as opposed to the 50s and the 80s remake, where Rob Zombie. Did I say Rob Liefeld? I meant Rob Zombie. Rob Zombie, his characters, as we know, aren't exactly the best. So I could imagine Rob Zombie's Blob characters, or even the Blob, like, making a giant head and going, shit, piss, cunt, motherfucker, god damn it, motherfucker, my dick, money, money, man. Something like that, I don't know. Or turning into, in Sherry Moon Zombie would be the cheerleader, because Rob Zombie. But this time around, we've had like I said, on and off announcements for a new Blob movie. But this time around, we've got a pretty good director behind it. And that director is David Bruckner. Now, if you don't know who David Bruckner is, you probably know his work more. The biggest being The Ritual on Netflix. It was a horror movie that just came out of nowhere. No one had any interest in it. And then it just dick punched everyone with how good it was. And more importantly, his remake of Hellraiser, which I really loved on Hulu. He did an amazing job, and I would love to see what the Blob would be like. Just please have practical effects. I know the Blob's going to be 90% or 100% CGI. Just they made the Blob so realistic with practical effects. Kind of copy that. I know, that's my fear, is that the Blob's just going to be CGI, and definitely in scenes where it's not going to be good CGI. So that's my concern, is that they're just going to focus on the Blob being all CGI. It concerns me. Anyway, so our next film is 28 Years Later. This movie has also been something that we've talked about, people have talked about for years, but we never got it. But no, Danny Boyle and Alex Garland are coming together to finally do 28 Years Later. Again, this is all production stuff, and productions can easily stop. But 28 Years Later has been the long-awaited end to this trilogy, and that's what I'd like. It also makes sense. It's almost been it basically has almost been 28 years since the first movie, so it does this is one of those times where a long-awaited sequel that does feel like a cash grab, it actually makes sense, because it's been so distant from everyone's minds, and I feel like that's what the movie's gonna go for, is that it's gonna try to go for this feeling of everyone's forgotten about, or force themselves to try to get over the zombie plague, the virus plague, because they weren't really zombies, they were just the infected, like a rage virus. So that's what I think the main goal of it's going. And I also am sure, they're going to say, it was all created by the government. It was all like a hoax, and I didn't need to wear a mask. I'm immune. Yeah, I'm pretty sure 2020 is going to play a big part in that movie. Or at least what we saw in 2020 is going to be a big effect of that movie. It's probably also why Danny Boyle wanted to do it again. He's like, dude, do you remember like 4 years ago when people like, hey Danny, it's Alex. Do you remember how crazy 4 years ago was? I try not to. Well, how about we do 28 years later? Yeah, all right. So that's how I kind of imagine it. And scene. And finally, we have the announcement for finally a new Star Trek movie by one of the directors from Andor. But here's the thing. It's going to be set in the Kelvin timeline, aka the Abrams verse. But it's going to be set as like decades before the original movie and made as like a origin film. And I'm like, time out. Literally, the whole point of the Kelvin timeline was that Nero came in, changed the timeline, and that's how we got that universe. And also, you're making an origin story to a rebooted universe in another timeline, and, like, I don't know how that works. Like, maybe it'll make sense, but, like, for right now, I'm just kind of, like, confused. I'm incredibly confused about all of this. Am I excited for a new Star Trek movie to possibly finally happen after Tarantino's film was supposed to happen? Yeah. In fact, I never wanted Tarantino to do a Star Trek movie. I was just like, I like the idea, Tarantino's Star Trek, but at the same time I was like, I don't think that's gonna, like, it's like ice cream and sushi. Two great things that would, in theory, could work together, but when you put them together, it's a nightmare, and you're on the toilet just shitting away. Anyway, so there you go, guys. Like I said, this isn't a long video, just talking about some movies that are like, oh, cool! I hope they finally get through past production and do something meaningful. But yeah, you guys tell me in the comments below, which of these 3 movies are you most excited for, and what are you hoping for from them? Just comment below, let me know. Once again, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.